Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the case of the British Airline cargo company, which has said that Brexit red tape means they have to sometimes send their planes to America for servicing and repairs, where it could all have been done in Europe before we left the EU. However, the Daily Mail are reporting the same story and blaming EU red tape for this. Who to believe? It's a tricky one, isn't it? Let's have a look at the details. Won't take long. So what's happened here is that an air freight business has said that because the previous government failed to do any Brexit impact assessment for the aviation sector, along with every other sector, they're stuck in the position of having to send planes across an entire ocean for some of their service and repair needs. And I think sometimes I'm hard done by because I have to go to the next town for repairs to my car. The reason is that there are EU-based companies who could absolutely do the work of service and repairing the Boeing 747s, which is the plane that this company, One Air, uses. But they don't think it's worth their while seeking accreditation with the UK. So immediately the problem here is not EU red tape. They've got the EU red tape. They can service planes that are based in the EU, not a problem at all. They've got all the paperwork they need for that. No, this is British red tape. And because that extra red tape wouldn't exist if we'd remained in the EU, because remember, they've got the EU accreditation, the EU red tape that exists, they already have that. So this is Brexit red tape. There, that was easy. But it's worth spending a little bit more time looking at the consequences of this. Now, part of the reason is that there just isn't enough business servicing and repairing Boeings when most of Europe has moved to Airbus. But it's not that those companies in Europe have stopped servicing and repairing Boeings. It's just, it's not worth their while spending the extra time and money getting accreditation with a third country for which there isn't that much work. It's simple market forces. We've created this extra layer of red tape for EU businesses with respect to British customers. We've done that. It's UK red tape. Important red tape. We need to make sure that aircraft is serviced and repaired by accredited operators. Like, would you be comfortable in a plane if you knew there was no licensing in place to make sure the maintenance was carried out by experts? If your plane may have been serviced by like Jeremy Clarkson or something, would you be happy? No, you would not. But the point is that these companies, they need EU accreditation to service any customer in the EU. So, of course, they have that. That's where they operate. And that's also the largest market in Europe. But then there's a separate process with separate costs to service Britain, because it's a third country now, it has its own system. Now, if there were loads of these planes in Britain in need of regular service and repairs, then yes, okay, those companies who absolutely, they would get that accreditation. They would pass on the cost to the British customers, of course. So we'd end up spending more for it. It would work out cheaper than going to America, so they would still pay it. It would still represent more cost to British businesses, though, and so less money going into our treasury, because this is what's happened with a lot of our trade. But where there isn't enough business in Britain to justify those extra costs, then they just cut out the British market. We've seen this happen already for Ranger products. In fact, as soon as we left the single market, there were some small businesses that I used that just wouldn't supply me anymore. That was it. I just couldn't get stuff. If we're not buying in bulk, whether it be goods or services, we just lose that trade. And it works both ways, of course. We lose the ability to export what we used to as well as import. Should be a perfect example of the benefits of having a large, almost continental-wide single market. The EU market's a brilliant case of a very large market, one of the top 3 markets in the world, with large, advanced, efficient supply chains, which has also driven high standards for both goods and services. Indeed, it is those high standards that earned the anger of the disaster capitalists who make up 100% of the people behind Brexit. According to the article in The Guardian, there seems to be like one place in Germany that will do these repairs and servicing. But I guess when their books are full, that's when they have to go off to America for it at an extra cost of about $500,000, according to Air One. That's the extra cost. The extra cost for each plane that can't be booked in with the one place in Europe that can do that maintenance with the Brexit red tape. And that comes directly out of the company's profits, of course, which means their tax returns will be smaller meaning that the taxes that they pay, and they're based in Britain, so they pay them to our Treasury, those payments to the Treasury are smaller, meaning less money for public services. And although this is an extra level of cost for being shut out the single market, it's the sort of thing I've been saying for years is happening across all sectors of our economy, because every pound that a company has to spend on Brexit red tape, which it didn't have to spend before Brexit, is a pound reduction in their profits, which is a reduction in the taxes they'll pay to the UK Treasury. And if they want to maintain those profits, then that means they have to pass on that cost to the consumer. Well, that consumer's based in Britain as well, so that reduces everyone else's profits somewhere down the chain. So it's still less money to the UK Treasury. And when people talk about, rejoining the single market as the easiest way to plug the budget gaps that the Labour government are now wrestling with, this is what they mean. The UK Treasury is sacrificing so much tax revenue being outside the single market. Now, I know joining is not as easy as many commentators make out, and it would absolutely not be quick. But remaining outside is not a long-term plan if we actually want to prioritise economic growth. Businesses have to spend more in order to do business. Whether that be, in this case, it's actually literally sending a plane to America. But in more normal cases, it means having to pay someone to sort out their customs or standards paperwork in the case of the single market, or, health certificates or something like that. Paying staff to be able to manage the process of making sure that all your paperwork's right for going across the border. Either way, whether you're importing or exporting, duties. Again, some of this is customs union related as well. There's a lot more money being spent on doing business. Even just the cost of transporting. Because there's now delays across that trade border, then that means there are haulage businesses who are less profitable because they're just stuck in a queue. You're not getting paid if your wheels aren't turning. These businesses don't like that, because it means lower profits. In some cases, if profit margins are tight, it means going out of business altogether. That has happened with a lot of businesses based in Britain. Some businesses have had to shift their investment to Europe, where they would have built up their capacity in this country. So, we've lost so much, and that's jobs as well as taxes. It's lost productivity, it's lost jobs, it's lost taxes. And then you think what those taxes are used for. Under serious governments, we know what they're used for under the Tories, sending to their mates offshore, right? But under a serious government, they're used for building infrastructure, which can then help British-based businesses operate even more efficiently, making more profit, returning more taxes to the Treasury. But it's not just business expenses. Some trade has just stopped because supply chains are stretched. It's sometimes too time-consuming, too tedious, or just too expensive to have that EU-UK trade. So some trade just stopped. Then there's the lost customs duty, because we can't actually carry out enough checks to stop smugglers. If we tried, we would stop trade down to the point where it would be political suicide for any government, because we wouldn't have slow traffic through Dover. We'd have no traffic. It would just be stopped. In fact, the amount of money we've lost in customs duty alone would have actually plugged the funding hole left by the Tories, with more left over. And as I say, that's an issue with leaving the customs union, not the single market. It's why the Tories were forced to increase the rate of tax. It's why we're all paying higher taxes now. It's why the overall rate of tax nationally is going to remain high for the foreseeable future as well. The best we can expect of Labour is they shift that burden upwards towards those with more wealth, make it fairer. But the rate nationally will still remain high because we're not generating the profits we would inside the EU. And even if we manage to reduce some of these trade barriers and we manage to get better economic growth, it will always be lower outside of the single market and customs union. The horrendous cost of Brexit is immense. And if the media were to report on it properly, the public would be begging the EU to let us rejoin. It's why the single most important thing I think we can ask of the government now, it's not, we'll just set a long-term aim to join the EU or the single market or stuff. No, that's just noise. We should be, as loudly as possible, asking them to order an economic impact assessment report into Brexit. That's what we should have. The Treasury should have done that before. It's ridiculous. The Treasury routinely carries out impact assessment reports for anything that could have an economic impact. That's routine. And yet they didn't do it for Brexit. Literally the most impactful economic policy this country has had in my lifetime, certainly. There should be a detailed analysis on how being outside the single market and customs union is impacting different sectors of our economy. There is no excuse for not having this assessment. And the results would be eye-opening for a lot of people. In the meantime, we can probably rely on the likes of the Daily Mail to keep talking about EU red tape when what they actually mean is Brexit red tape. After all, how can we be subject to EU red tape when we're not only outside the EU, we're outside the single market and customs union as well? They got their sovereignty. They should now take ownership of the consequences. And the people who believed them, the people who were conned by them, should demand that they own the consequences. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.